Today we get into the real pathology of Avodah Zarah. What is the source of Avodah Zarah? Is it in the object? Is it the thing from which the Avodah Zarah spreads out to the world? Is it in the subject who serves it? And we'll learn as we understand the sugya that the source is in a corrupted value system. And what do you do when you have a corrupted, something corrupted in your software? You have to uninstall it. You can't fix it. You uninstall it. And then you start again. And the mitzvah of dismantling Avodah Zarah is uninstalling a corrupted value system. And sometimes when your software has been corrupted, it's affected documents and it's affected folders and files. And sometimes you have to delete those folders and files as well. You've got to get rid of it. You can't leave a bit of it somewhere or other. It's like cancer, chas v'shalom. You've got to get rid of it. You've got to remove it completely from the world. That's why the Torah is so fixated on removing Avodah Zarah. The hills are alive with the sounds of idolatry. ההרים והגבעות מותרים. Avodah Zarah Daf Mem He Amud Aleph. Starting with two psukim. Psilei Elohei hem tisrufun ba'esh. Their idols, the idols of their gods, you should burn in fire. Lo tachmod kesef v'zahav aleihem. And if they've decorated their idols with gold and silver, don't want the gold and silver. It's all corrupted. If you take the gold and silver, you're incorporating that corruption into your own homes. Don't do that. And in Parshas Re'eh, Abed ta'abdun et kol ha'mekomot asher avdu sham hagoyim. Destroy all the places where they served idolatry. Asher atem yorshim otam et Eloheihem, where places in Eretz Yisrael that you have inherited. Al heharim haramim, on the high mountains. V'al hagvaot, and on the hills. V'tachat kol eitz ra'anan, and under all the leafy trees. And Rabbi Akiva says in our Mishnah on that, Ani ovin va'adun lefanecha. I'll give you havona in this. I'll give you understanding of this principle. What does it mean under every leafy tree? Kol makom shata motzeh har gavoa v'givan niseiah v'etz ra'anan. Wherever you see in Eretz Yisrael, there's a tall mountain or a beautiful hill, and on it there's some leafy trees. You must know that's a place to look for avodas kechovim. You're going to find idolatry there. Not that is the idolatry, but that is the place that the idolaters used to use as an attractive place. And so I'll explain to you, because you understand the principle of idolatry. With us, we're mimah makim karaticha Hashem. When we build our shuls, other than the Beis Hamikdash, we go down so that we can look up. I'll lift my eyes up to the mountain and daven to Hashem from down below. We stand below and we look up to Hashem. That's how we do it. But Avodah Zarah, the idolaters, used to stand on the mountains. They used to serve high. They used to want to look down on the world. And their places of worship are high places. And still today, you see in Europe, where all the old medieval churches were built, they're all on the highest, always on hills or the highest part of the village. Not so the shuls. The shuls are in low, unostentatious places. Explains Rabbi Akiva, because that's part of the concept of idolatry, is that the object is high, and that's the place from which you serve it. You'll notice that as far as the Makoros, the sources we're referencing in this shir are just Rashi's family. It's Rashi, his grandson Rabbeinu Tam, and his great-grandson Ri, the Balei Tosfos. That's where we're going to focus our attention. The Mishnah says, Hanochrim ha'avdim et harim ve'et hagvaot, hein mutarin u'mash aleihem asurim. Even if the idolaters have served mountains and hills, those mountains and hills are not forbidden. Even if that was the object of service, they served the mountain doesn't become osur. Shene'emar lo tachmod kesef v'zahav aleihem, because the pasuk says you shouldn't take gold and silver on them, implying that they themselves are okay. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Omer Eloheihem ale harim. Rabbi Yossi Aglili learns it from the second pasuk. If you punctuate the pasuk differently, then it says She'atem yorshim otam, pause, et Eloheihem al harim haramim v'al hagvaot. That means they're gods on the mountains, but not the mountains. Eloheihem al hagvaot, they're gods on the hills. V'lo hagvaot Eloheihem. You see from there that we don't regard the mountain or the hill as being their god. So if objects of nature are not don't become idolatrous objects, why does the Asherah tree become an idolatrous object? Because a human being was involved in producing it. It was planted by somebody. And if there's the human manufacture in the object, then it becomes forbidden. The object becomes an idol. The object can become avodah zarah, and there's an isur hana. We're not allowed to have pleasure or benefit from it. But if the object was created by God, if the object is natural, it can't become an object of avodah zarah. There are two versions in Rashi. In our Rashi, we see the one version, and then in parenthesis, we see the second version. And Tosfos deals with that second version as well. There are two versions in Rashi. Rashi's great-grandson, the real master of Tosfos, goes with the first view of Rashi, and Rabbeinu Tam goes with the second view of Rashi. Rabbeinu Tam is Rashi's grandson. So in Rashi's own Beis HaMedrash, in Rashi's own school of thought, among his own grandchildren and great-grandchildren, there are two ways of understanding this, and let's have a look at them. The first one, Rashi says, ההרים עצמן מותרים לחצוב אבנים מהם ולזריעה. So you find there's this Mount Carmel by Haifa. There's always been idolatry around Haifa. And you go on the top of the mountain, and they've served it. There's idol worship there that's going on. And you get rid of all of that. Now, what about Mount Carmel? Can you use the mountain? Yes. Says the Mishnah, and Rashi says, Mutter, you can use the sand and the stones from the mountain. You can have picnics on the mountain. You can hike in the forest, do what you want. Because if something is attached to the earth, it doesn't become asur. As we learn in the Mishnah. But the words in Rashi that are important to focus on, it never became asur. It never became avodah zarah, no matter what they did to it. And Rashi goes on, however, umash alehem, ve'afal gavde'inhu lav avodat kochavim mikru, velo mitzri. Even though the mountains are not objects of avodah zarah, Gzerat HaKatuvu, the Torah decrees, that if it's covered with gold or they've made decorations for the mountain, those decorations have the same dim as decorations of a Buddha, of a real idol. Even though the mountain that it's decorating isn't avodah zarah, the decoration of that mountain is avodah zarah. Why? That's Gzeras HaKosov, says Rashi. The Torah tells us that it's not the way we would think logically. Asks Rashi, V'had Tanya lekaman v'ovdeim b'sayif. And what happens if people serve the mountain? So the mountain, over centuries, the mountain was used as idolatry, but the mountain doesn't become an idol. Now somebody goes and serves the mountain. So he's not serving an idol. Nevertheless, we say, Ovdeim b'sayif. They get the death sentence. For what? They're serving something which isn't an idol. High timer, the reason is, the afagav de lav avodat kochavim ninhu leinyan itsuri ovdehem mia, even though the mountain is not an object of idolatry, Rashi says an amazing chidush. Mia l'shem avodat kochavim avdiluhu ula avodat kochavim michavni. The people bowing to this mountain intend to serve idolatry and do it for the purpose and for the sake of idolatry. So in their minds, the mountain is an idol. They're bowing to a concept of idolatry, although the object they're using to represent that concept happens not to be an idol. Rashi introduces the idea that you can serve idolatry without an idol. It's an amazing idea, that you don't need an object of avodah zarah. You can serve an idea, and that can be idolatry. It doesn't have to be the object itself. And in the Tosfos says goes like Rashi. The second parish in Rashi that we have in parenthesis, ההרים והגבעות שהם קרקע עולם, the mountains and the hills which are earth, are natural, אין בהן כוח לאוסרן, אבל עבודת כוכבים מי יהבי. We don't have the ability to say they're asur. You can't use the mountain. How can you do that? You'll find a situation where half of the country you can't utilize. No. You can utilize it. It's a natural resource, and it remains a natural resource. But while it was being served as idolatry, it does become an idol. The fact that it's natural doesn't mean it doesn't become an idol. You see the two views in Rashi itself. The one is it cannot become an idol. So why do people who serve it, are they guilty of the death sentence? Because the intention was to serve idolatry. The second view in Rashi is they do become idols. The mountains themselves become idols. Why don't you have to destroy them? That's Gzerat HaKatuv. That's what we learn from the Pasuk. You don't have to destroy them. If you serve the moon and the sun itself, yes, what they used to do is make images of the moon and the sun and serve the images of the moon and the sun. But the moon and the sun cannot become an idol for the same reason. Ask Rabbeinu Tam on the next page of the sources. I don't get it, says Rabbeinu Tam. It's totally illogical. If my grandfather is going to say that the mountain is not an idol, the mountain is not an avodah zarah, there's no way that serving the idol is guilty of idolatry. Idolatry means you serve an idol. You're telling me the mountain's not an idol. So you served it. That's an illusion. It's not really. You're not serving an idol. You think you're serving an idol. It's not an idol. Asks Rabbeinu Tam. And therefore Rabbeinu Tam says, Nirul Rabbeinu Tam, Devada avodat kachavim mikru, v'tikrov tam asur. They are idols. The mountains do become idols. V'lachach ovdeim b'sayif. And that's why, if you serve the mountain, you're guilty of death because you've served idolatry, because the mountains have become idolatry. So again, there's a machlokes between Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam, or the two versions of Rashi, whether the mountain itself becomes avodah zarah. It's just that it doesn't have to be destroyed, or whether the mountain does not become avodah zarah. Sorry, the mountain becomes avodah zarah, as Rabbeinu Tam says, but it doesn't have to be destroyed. That's a declaration of the Torah, Gzeras HaKosu, or the mountain never becomes avodah zarah. However, if one serves the avodah zarah, then if one serves the mountain, you are an idol worshipper, although you're not worshipping an idol. That's the strange thing in Rashi. And Ri, who's now a generation later, hears his uncle Rabbeinu Tam and learns this with Rabbeinu Tam, and he learns Rashi's view, and he comes to the conclusion Rashi's right. Although Rabbeinu Tam is asking such a powerful question, Ri doesn't have a problem with the question. Ri says, my great-grandfather is right, and the mountain never becomes awesome. Nevertheless, serving the mountain is awesome. So what does that mean if we try to understand? Because once we understand the pathology of the avodah zarah, we begin to get to the essence of what it is. The avodah zarah is not in the object. Yes, you can corrupt an object, and then you have to destroy the object. But the corruption isn't sourced in the object. The corruption is sourced in the person serving. Now, if we look in the Rambam, in the beginning of the mitzvahs lo ta'aseh, of the Rambam Sefer HaMitzvahs, the first 5 or 6 mitzvahs are all about avodah zarah. HaMitzvah harishona mitzvat lo ta'aseh. The first mitzvah of lo ta'aseh is shehizhiranu meha'amin ha'elohut lezulato yitaleh. To believe that anybody has power other than Hashem. That's the first thing. The second mitzvah, ha-mitzvah hashniya hi sheyizhiranu me'asot avodah zarah, to manufacture an avodah zarah. And then mitzvah 3 and 4 expand on that. And mitzvah 5, ha-mitzvah chamishit hi sheyizhiranu me'ishtachavot la'avodah zarah, to serve the idol. So 3 things: belief, manufacture, service. And I would suggest that when the Rambam starts, that the very first mitzvah is the belief. And if you look how the Rambam introduces Hilchos Avodah Zarah and explains how over the generations people drifted, how they became corrupted. It started off as Hashem, but Hashem uses the stars and the moon and the sun. He uses that to influence the world. And then it was, so we need to carry favor with the influences, and not just with Hashem himself. And then the influences became the Ikar, and Hashem became the Tafel, and then Hashem got forgotten altogether, and we started serving objects. If you see from there, you realize it all starts with a corrupted value system. It's a belief. It starts with a wrong belief. And when you act on that belief, that's Avodah Zarah. If it's just something in your mind and you never do anything about it, it's not yet Avodah Zarah. If there's a theoretical corruption in your system, but it hasn't manifested in any way, there's nothing you can do. The moment it manifests, you can destroy it. And so it is here. The mitzvah Arishon, and therefore one understands Rashi, and we understand why Ri likes Rashi. The essence is in your mind, what is Rashi's words? They're amazing words. Nevertheless, even though they're not idols, says Rashi, Mi al l'shem avodat kochavim avdi. What are you doing? You're bowing down to idolatry, if not to an idol. Avodat kochavim mechavni, and you're intending for the service of idolatry, the concept, the idea of idolatry, even though it's not an idol. Yes, if you do use an object, that object is also corrupted, but the source of the corruption is in your intention, that you don't accept Hashem as the only force in the world, that you have promoted other forces alongside Hashem or above Hashem or in place of Hashem. That's the problem. It's the belief system. It's the value system. If an action is a problem, you can change the action. If an object is the problem, you can switch out the object. But when a value system is the problem, you've got to destroy it. There's no way. It infests everything. It affects everything. It infects everything. One can't solve a problem if the value system underpinning everything is a corrupted value system. And that's what we learn in Masechta Avodah Zarah, that sometimes the value system is corrupt. The problem we're having in Gaza at the moment, it's not just the actions. The actions you can deal with. It's a value system that's there. You can't get rid of unless it's completely destroyed. With Nazism, it was a value system. The thing had to be destroyed. You can't just make a deal and try and change the situation. And so it is with Avodah Zarah. We learn in this Masechta that there are times when the values are so corrupt that they corrupt everything around them, and even if you leave a little bit of it somewhere, it will grow, it will develop, and you'll have the problem again. And that there's a requirement, therefore, of abed ta'abdun et kol ha'mekomot asher avdu hagoyim asher atem yoshim otam et Elohim al harim haramim v'al. You've got to destroy it completely, because this is not about an individual object. This is not about a thing, and this is not even about an action. This is about a corrupted mindset that can destroy your lives as the Jewish people.